Spider-Lizard. This version of Spider-Man emerges after Peter Parker is accidentally exposed to the same device used to cure Curt Connors of his lizard form, specifically in the spectacular Spider-Man issues 39 and 40 from 1976. The machine, known as the Innervator, was meant to restore Connors, but Peter is caught in its effects and begins to change. At first, the shift is psychological. He becomes increasingly aggressive, loses remorse, and starts treating criminals with unusual cruelty. During a confrontation with Chip Martin, also known as Schizoid Man, Peter goes far beyond intimidation and nearly commits murder before being physically stopped. As the condition worsens, the transformation becomes physical, turning him into a monstrous fusion of Spider-Man and the Lizard. With reptilian skin that resists bullets and a mind driven by rage, he rampages through the city. The situation becomes so dire that the only solution is an antidote provided by Curt Connors, which ultimately reverses the transformation and restores Peter to normal. Poison. This version of Peter Parker comes from Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man issue 3, set on Earth 70,134, and later expands through What If Spider-Man the Other. His story initially mirrors the main continuity until he encounters Morlun, the interdimensional hunter of spider-powered beings. The battle leaves Peter mutilated, hospitalized, and barely alive. Even then, Morlun returns to finish him, injuring Mary Jane in the process. In response, Peter lashes out with something far more primal than his usual heroism. He grows bone-like stingers from his arms and brutally kills Morlun by consuming him, acting more like a spider than a man. After this, Peter appears to die, but his body is cocooned in a regenerative state. When offered resurrection by a mystical spider entity, he refuses, choosing death instead. However, the Venom symbiote finds him and begins a long, forced bonding process that breaks him physically and mentally. The result is Poison, a hollow and disturbing being that attempts to control Mary Jane and later digs up Gwen Stacy's body to create a companion. This version removes Peter's humanity entirely, leaving behind something driven only by possession and control. Last Stand Spider-Man. This version of Spider-Man appears in a dystopian future timeline tied to alternate Marvel continuities, often associated with darker what-if style storytelling rather than a single defining issue. Here, Peter Parker is older, worn down, and defined by loss. The death of Aunt May marks a turning point, pushing him into a more violent and unforgiving role as a vigilante. He kills Kraven the Hunter in a moment of vengeance, an act that permanently scars him. From that point on, he becomes a man filled with regret, unable to reconcile his actions with the ideals he once held. He is shown visiting graves, facing charges that suggest manslaughter, and living with the consequences of a life that spiraled out of control. Despite once having a family, including Mary Jane and a son named Ben, he loses them as well. In the end, when confronted by authorities, he refuses to surrender and is gunned down, choosing to fight until his last moment. Superior Spider-Man. This version is introduced in the Superior Spider-Man storyline following events from the Amazing Spider-Man issue 700. Dr. Otto Octavius swaps minds with Peter Parker before Peter's death, taking over his body and life. With Peter's memories influencing him, Otto becomes obsessed with proving that he can be a better Spider-Man. He adopts a more advanced suit, develops spider bots for surveillance, and operates with a level of efficiency that Peter never aimed for. However, his methods reveal a darker mindset. He blinds the Vulture, breaks Scorpion's jaw, and kills the villain Massacre even after he is already defeated and no longer a threat. While he does save lives, and even works alongside Doctor Strange to stop supernatural threats like Master Pandemonium, his arrogance and lack of empathy define him. His journey eventually leads him back to his original self, but not before proving that intelligence without morality can turn heroism into something cold and calculating. Symbiote Spider-Man. This version comes from Earth TRN 848 and explores a timeline where Peter Parker never removes the Venom symbiote. Instead of bonding with Eddie Brock, the symbiote remains with Peter, gradually altering his personality. The longer he wears it, the more aggressive and unstable he becomes. He begins suffering from intense nightmares and emotional breakdowns, which those close to him, like Mary Jane, quickly notice. Under the symbiote's influence, Peter unmasks and brutally beats villains like Hobgoblin, eventually killing him by crushing his skull. His thinking becomes distorted, viewing the world in extremes where loved ones are everything and enemies deserve no mercy. He even abandons Aunt May during a fire due to the symbiote's fear response. Over time, he kills multiple criminals and uses violence to intimidate others, including J. Jonah Jameson. Eventually, his actions lead to a confrontation where he manages to separate from the symbiote and begins to rebuild his life, though the damage remains. Ghost Spider. This version of Peter Parker appears in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 38 and is set on Earth 11,638. In his original life, he is not a traditional hero, but someone addicted to power. With Uncle Ben still alive and supporting him, this Peter begins absorbing the abilities of other Spider-Men across the multiverse to grow stronger. What starts as ambition turns into obsession, and he crosses moral lines without hesitation, even causing the deaths of alternate versions of himself. Eventually, he is confronted by the main Earth 616 Spider-Man and made to see the damage he has caused. After his death, he is resurrected through mystical means by a version of Bruce Banner who serves as the Sorcerer Supreme. Reborn as Ghost Spider, he carries powers similar to Ghost Rider, infused with supernatural energy and the souls of the damned. This version represents a fallen hero trying to carry the weight of his past actions. Zombie Spider-Man. This version comes from Marvel Zombies and originates on Earth 2149. In this universe, a zombie virus infects superheroes while allowing them to retain their intelligence. Peter Parker becomes one of the infected and quickly falls victim to an uncontrollable hunger. Tragically, his first victims are Mary Jane and Aunt May, acts he is fully aware of and deeply ashamed of. Unlike other zombies, Peter is horrified by what he has done and struggles constantly with guilt. His body decays into a skeletal, corpse-like form, yet he continues to function and even fight. At one point, after consuming the Silver Surfer, he gains the power cosmic, making him even more dangerous. Despite this, he attempts to redeem himself by seeking a cure and helping survivors. His story ends with him sacrificing himself as part of a plan to spread a cure through Sandman, finally avenging the people he lost. Patton Parnell. This version of Spider-Man appears in Edge of Spider-Verse number 4 and is one of the darkest reinterpretations of Peter Parker. Patton Parnell is not a hero, but a deeply disturbed teenager even before gaining powers. After being bitten by a radioactive spider, his body mutates in grotesque ways, developing spider-like features and abilities. Instead of using these powers responsibly, he indulges his violent tendencies, experimenting on animals and eventually turning to humans. He develops a hunger that grows stronger with each victim, feeding on anything he can catch. His abusive uncle becomes one of his first human victims, followed by classmates and neighbors. His transformation culminates in a horrifying plan to reproduce by implanting spider eggs into others. Ultimately, he is killed by Morlun, but not before leaving irreversible damage behind. This version shows what happens when power amplifies an already broken mind. Dark Spider-Man. This version is Mac Gargan, featured prominently during the Dark Reign era, particularly in Dark Avengers number 1. Gargan, originally known as Scorpion, bonds with the Venom symbiote and is recruited by Norman Osborn to join a government-sanctioned team posing as heroes. Taking on the appearance of Spider-Man in a black suit, he becomes the team's version of the character. However, unlike Peter Parker, Gargan is reckless, sadistic, and openly violent. He frequently eats his enemies, even consuming limbs during combat, and shows no concern for human life. His actions go beyond brutality, including murder and psychological torment. The Spider. This version appears in Exiles and is from Earth 15, where Peter Parker merges with the Carnage symbiote. Known simply as the Spider, he is a psychotic and highly dangerous individual. He is recruited by Weapon X, a group tasked with fixing broken realities, but he approaches every mission with excessive brutality. He kills without hesitation. His sense of humor is dark and unsettling, often mocking his victims in their final moments. His past is filled with such extreme crimes that he was sentenced to 67 life terms. In the end, his violent nature catches up to him when Firestar uses her powers to burn him alive, bringing an end to one of the most unhinged versions of Spider-Man.